Dark moon, black moon, new moon. What's the difference between all of these? Sometimes people use these terms interchangeably, but in reality, there are some very different energetic responses to these three different types of moons. So, this is what we're going to be talking about today in today's episode. So, Merry Meet, I'm Aislin, and this is Ask Aislin. So, I'm here today talking about the dark moon, clearing up any misconceptions that people may have, and also sharing with you some ideas for ways that you can celebrate the dark moon and really tap into this energy, including rituals, spells, and magical workings that would be most aligned with this type of moon. If you're here live, welcome. And if you like what you're hearing, leave a heart or a thumbs up, and that will just help this get into the feed of more people. So let's dive right in, and we are going to start with some definitions. So, to begin with, I'm going to start with the definition of the new moon because the new moon actually, where it is placed, it will be related to where the dark moon falls. So, the new moon is considered day one of any cycle. And hi, just saying hi to those who are joining. And this takes place when the moon is between the earth and the sun. So, what this means is that unless there is some kind of an eclipse at the same time, we will actually not see the moon at all. But we're going to talk about more about this later because we actually are experiencing an eclipse. We're just not going to see it from the United States. Now, some people call the new moon the dark moon, and in reality, these are actually two very different moons. And at the end of this all, I'm also going to talk about the timing because in certain parts of the world, this is the new moon right now. So my watch is even saying this is the new moon, even though the new moon isn't actually taking place for several more hours. So we're actually still in the dark moon, despite the fact that many of our calendars are saying new moon. So, in order to figure out when the dark moon begins, what you would do is you would go to a lunar calendar. You would find the specific moment of the new moon. So, in this case, this cycle, it's at 9:12 p.m. Pacific time today. And this is Wednesday, the 19th of April. And then you go backwards 24 hours, and that is the start of the dark moon. Now, the dark moon will usually occur when there is 0% illumination. So, if you can't see the moon at all, likely we're in that dark moon phase. Now, traditionally, the new moon doesn't actually begin until we are at 0.2% to 1% illumination. There's some disagreement here. So, some people will say as early as 0.2%, and some people will say as late as 1%. So, what that means is that on many calendars, the new moon really isn't happening till about like 12 hours after it actually says so on a calendar. So again, there's some disagreement with this, and what I think the most important thing is not to get tripped up in all of the times and the dates, because no matter what our definition is, the dark moon just simply precedes the new moon. Now, the energies here are very different, though they do overlap in some ways. So, the dark moon is our most powerful point of releasing in any cycle. So, if there is something that you really want to get rid of and you really want to make sure that it's gone for good, the dark moon is one of your best bets to do this type of releasing and to really let it go. So now, as we release and we shed during that moon, we make room for something else to come in. And that's essentially what the new moon energy is. So it's that space that we have made to draw something new in. And so, for this reason, a very good analogy of these two moons together is the menstrual cycle. So, the shedding and the bleeding of the menstrual cycle is a release. Okay, it's a release of energy just like we have on the dark moon. We have a release of energy no matter what gender we are, whether we're bleeders or not. Everyone has this potential to release some energy. But going back to this analogy, what that means is when we have a period, if you're a bleeder, you have a period, you release that energy. What it does is it purifies the womb and it allows a space to open up for potential life in the next cycle. And this is exactly what the dark moon and the new moon is also doing for us, just in a different realm and in a different way. So I'm going to be talking more about dark moon magic later in this episode, and I'll be talking about new moon magic in a future episode. But I just wanted to delineate these two differences between these energies. Now, the rest of this episode will be devoted to the dark moon, though. Okay, now this releasing energy is so powerful at this time. And generally, how people experience this is this pulling inward, this like drawing inward. And this will especially start to amplify as we pass into the last quarter. So this would be 7 days before we reach the new moon. People will start to feel perhaps a pull inward, perhaps starting to be more reflective. Some people actually withdraw. Some people feel very sad. There could be a heightening of emotions. And in some ways, again, going back to that analogy of the menstrual cycle, in some ways you could liken this to the PMS that sometimes comes before a period where people are just feeling a little out of sorts, a little wanting to be alone, and a little bit more emotional than usual. Now, as we get closer and closer and closer to the dark moon, this energy begins to amplify, and it especially hits its height when we get 72 hours prior to the dark moon. This is called the balsamic moon when we enter that space. So this would be 3 days before we enter the beginning of the next lunar cycle. So if you want to know when the balsamic moon starts, you would go again to a lunar chart, you would find the new moon, and then you would go backwards 3 days or 72 hours. Now, this is when a lot of people start to experience spontaneous shadow work sessions. They may receive insight into things that they had troubled them for some time, that they didn't have answers to, perhaps decisions, relationships, events that had happened, and all of a sudden there can be this aha moment when true insight is coming down. Now, depending on what comes up during this time, you might realize outdated patterns of thinking, limiting beliefs that you have held on to for a long time, maybe we're not even aware of. You may start to realize these patterns or these beliefs that you've been holding on to, and you may begin to let them go. And sometimes people, like I said, just feel a little bit more emotional, and there can be like more of an emotional charge that comes up around certain experiences that maybe you hadn't felt for a while, and all of a sudden you have this kind of emotional charge around it right around that dark moon period. And that is a good space to start to let go of some of that emotional charge. So it doesn't mean that we necessarily have to let go of the memories of that event or anything necessarily regarding the event, but just letting go of some of that emotional charge can help. And the dark moon really invites us to do that kind of work. So whatever it is, this energy of the dark moon is primed for some type of release. Now, for this reason, I try to let go of at least a little something every time the dark moon comes. So every time we come to this lunar cycle, it can be useful to just try to let go of a little something. Sometimes people think this has to be some big, huge thing. And yes, it might be. So if you have something really big to let go of, now is the time. But it can just be a little bit, just shedding just a little bit off can help greatly. And if we do this cycle after cycle after cycle, that just adds up on top of itself. And eventually that is a big release. So let's talk about some dark moon activities, and then maybe these will kind of inspire you to things that you would like to do. I'm just looking at the comments here for a second. Yeah, Danielle is saying she woke up and could really feel that energy very thick around her home. Saw and sat in it for a few moments. Very good, very spontaneous, and you needed to let go of some things. Yeah, very much aha moment. Those are the greatest times, and what you'll find too, I'll talk a little bit more about this later as we get into like more of the shadow work aspect of the dark moon. But if you are somebody who is working on shadow work over cycle after cycle after cycle, you will start to experience things like Danielle, where there are these aha moments where you just kind of, she didn't really do anything. She woke up, she could feel the energy and sat in it, and then was able to like really feel that release and that aha. Not so much a release, but more of a spontaneous kind of insight. So I guess that brings me to shadow work. So we might as well talk about it since we're already talking about it. So shadow work is a great activity for the dark moon. Now, for those who don't know, just very briefly, I'm going to talk about this, what shadow work is, but in the future, there's going to be some more episodes on that. So, shadow work is a process of facing and acknowledging those rejected parts of ourselves, which we call the shadows. And this can be done through prompts and exercises, especially when we're newer to it. And those who engage in it regularly, like I was mentioning, they will often find that they have those spontaneous sessions at times, especially around the dark moon. But during a prompted or a spontaneous shadow work session, you tend to have these aha moments and you start to understand circumstances and relationships, events. You might see them actually from a new perspective. So there are actually people who call shadow work the surest path to enlightenment. Now, I am somebody who I don't really like extreme language. I don't like when we say this is the only way or the best way. I think the shadow work is a great way to find enlightenment, but don't miss me here. It's not the only way. So you don't necessarily have to do it to reach enlightenment, but it is. I agree with what they say. The surest way. It really does lead people to that path where they start to open up and spiritually evolve and become much more enlightened. Now, if you're interested in shadow work and you're new and you don't know much about it, check out some of my other videos. I have a couple videos that are called Introduction to Shadow Work. They're full-length classes on my YouTube, Body Mind Witchcraft, and also here in the Body Mind Witchcraft Facebook group. Or if you don't have the Witch's Guide to Shadow Work yet, you can get that free, and I will put a link just below this video where you could download a copy of that as well. So let's move on from shadow work since it's not just one aspect of this video tonight. So the second thing that you're very primed for during a dark moon is contemplation. So some people are just simply drawn to think during this time. So contemplate during this time. Now, Carl Jung, who we usually consider to be the godfather of shadow work, he called this active imagination. So this is where it's not necessarily a meditation. We're not going to be guided through anything usually during this, but it's really just we're reflecting on something and we reflect on it as we get relaxed, and eventually there could be those aha moments that we were talking about earlier. Now, when people are first starting out, and even people who are pretty seasoned at this, you can use prompts. You could just take a prompt about something related to the shadow or related to the inner child or related to, things that irk you or annoy you, and you could just sit and contemplate that, or you could lie down and contemplate that. Now, when we do this, people become a lot more receptive to the insights because you're already being prompted. And the other thing that is interesting about the dark moon that I haven't mentioned yet is that the veils between the worlds actually thin just a little bit here. So it's not on the par with like Samhain or anything like that, or Beltane when we really have some very thin veils. But every cycle you have that thinning right around the dark moon. I think it really starts at the balsamic moon. And that's why people may find that they receive messages from guides or from angels or ancestors during this time because those veils are a little bit thinner. But I also think that because the veils are thinner, you're also more apt to receive guidance from your higher self as well, which is really probably where those aha moments are coming from. So, after contemplation, we also have meditation. So sometimes people are just, maybe they don't meditate much, but when they get to the dark moon, they really feel like they want to meditate. And it could be more like that contemplative idea of where it's just very open ended and you're just kind of sitting or lying and just letting come to you what comes to you. Or you could try guided meditations. I think a really good one would be a guided meditation into the underworld. We've done that in our Shadow Seekers membership before. You can find videos on YouTube. Just look for a guided meditation into the underworld, or especially like Anana's descent into the underworld. There's a lot of meditations on that, and those can be very great for doing a guided meditation during the dark moon. Now, I do want to pause for just a moment and clear up a misconception that I hear, not a ton, but I hear it enough that I want to clear this up. So sometimes there is this misconception about the dark moon, shadow work, and then especially when we start to use like words like the underworld. And people who are newer to the path or who have come from a Christian background, might have even been here for a while, have been coming from a Christian background or a background of the Abrahamic religions, there sometimes gets this connotation of this darkness as being evil. And so we just want to clear that up. This is the very furthest thing from evil, but you'd be surprised, obviously. Well, probably you wouldn't be surprised how many messages that I receive doing what I do of people telling me exactly where I'm going. Right? So there is nothing evil about any of this. And really, I think where this comes from is just people's fears of the unknown. And, really what our shadow work is, what the underworld really is to us when we're doing shadow work or we're doing dark moon magic, that is the unconscious mind. So, right, there are people who would be very, very scared of what is down in that unconscious. But for those of us who are not, there's nothing evil about this. And in fact, like we said, this is the path to enlightenment anyway. So our shadow is not evil, just simply rejected parts of the self, and facing it is our healing. So I just wanted to pause for a moment and just mention that it's always worth reiterating. So another thing that you can do during the dark moon, like I mentioned, was releasing and letting go rituals. So let's talk about different types of these. So in a letting go ritual, this is usually a ritual where we're going to release or let go of something energetic, emotional, or perhaps even physical, because you actually very much can let go of physical pain, especially if that pain seems to not have a great source, like it's not coming from an injury or something, it's just residual pain that's just in the body. You have a great capacity to let go of some of that during a letting go ritual. Now, I wanted to I'll just mention my own practice so you could see what I would do during a letting go ritual. So I do this every dark moon without fail. I didn't get to do it last night, so I'll be doing it later tonight. And during this ritual, I cast my circle, I call my quarters. You don't need to do any of that. I do work with deities, so I call Kali and Ganesha as an intercessor. He comes first, and then I call Kali and mostly work with her during the ritual. And what I do is just very simple, writing down through stream of consciousness. I write down all of the things that I'd like to let go of, fears that I have. Some months, these are the same things. Sometimes there's a lot of them, and sometimes there are not as many of them, but I do this every month without fail. And then I prefer to burn the paper, but you could destroy it in other ways, like ripping it up. I think a neat one is to put it into water. So making sure that it isn't permanent ink, because the idea here is when you put the paper into water, you want the words to dissipate and just erase over time. So that can be a very simple letting go ritual. And I generally will have a candle that I burn, and I will usually do divination as well. So you can kind of like choose your own adventure there, but like with letting go, a really effective way is that writing things down. Now, if you would like to do a cord cutting. So, cord cutting is a different kind of releasing or letting go ritual. And these cord cuttings are very effective at severing energetic ties to people or to experiences or to places. So there are a couple of different ways that you can do this. You could do this mentally, or you could do it with a physical representation as well. So sometimes it could just be as simple as closing the eyes, kind of get into a deep and meditative space, and then just sense around your body any cords that are attached to you. You don't have to see them. Sometimes people can see them. You don't have to, but just sort of sense that. And even if you can't sense any, there are likely things attached to you that are draining you of energy anyway. And so from there, a very simple mental cord cutting is just to imagine cutting all of those cords that are connected to you. okay, and sending the energy back to where it came from. Anything that's not serving you, you can also have that little caveat, cutting off any energy that is not serving my higher good, my greater good. I like to imagine having like a selenite wand while I'm doing this. So that would be like a mental cord cutting. Now, if there is a specific person that you'd like to cut the cord to as well, you could do that mentally as well. You would just do kind of the same thing. Imagine that person somewhere and just imagine you severing that cord. You could cut it with that selenite wand or an athame or whatever you want. Now, sometimes people like to bring in a physical representation of the cord cutting. So here, what you could do is you could get ribbons or strings of any kind, and you cut it as you are imagining severing that energetic connection to them. You would just cut it with a knife. Another way that you can do this is you can take the string and you can get 2 candles, so one representing you and one representing the thing that you're going to release, or the person or event or place that you're going to do that cord cutting to. And then you tie the ribbon in between the 2 candles. Now, you want to use some caution here because you are going to light the candles, and as they burn down, eventually they are going to burn that string and it's going to sever. So as you can imagine, you have to use that caution because that string can catch on fire. So you want to make sure that if you're doing this and you're not going to be, first of all, I would not do this and not be observing it. I would make sure that you are monitoring this. But you can also put it in like a shower stall or a bathtub to just ensure that if that cord were to fall and still be lit with fire, that it would fall onto the porcelain of the tub or the shower. Okay, so just be careful with that. But it can be a really nice, effective way, just connect the 2 candles, light them, and then this will just sever that connection. And at the same time, you could also do like a mental severing as well. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about, though, is a banishing ritual. So the cord cutting is very good for energetic severing of people, bad habits, or places. Now, banishing ritual is like taking it a step further, and here it's like a cord cutting. The cord cuttings will generally sever like an energetic connection, but banishing, if done correctly, should sever a physical connection as well. So here's where I tell people, you do what you're called to, what works for you, and what is best for you. But I just would use a bit of caution with banishing, especially if it's a person that you need to actually still be in contact with. So an example would be a former spouse or partner that you're still sharing children with. If you still have to share your children, if your children still have to see that person and you still have to have that person in your life, the banishing ritual can really complicate things. So in that case, the cord cutting might be better. But if you are sure that you want to sever a relationship, of physical connection with a person, banishing rituals can be exactly what you need. Okay? So in a simple banishing spell, you can get a black candle. You can carve that person's name or that place into the candle. Anything that you would like to carve into the candle with it, you can, symbols, things like that. And then you set the intention to sever this physical tie as well as an energetic tie. And then you let the candle burn down. And then I would probably like bury the candle wax or dispose of it, somewhere out in nature. So that would be a banishing spell. And so all of these would fall under the category of letting go or releasing. Okay, so another thing that you can do during the full moon, sorry, not full moon, the new moon. I was just seeing, Nancy's here. Hi, Nancy. I know you can't stay long, but nice to see you. So you can work with your intuition or do some psychic development work. This is a great time for third eye exercises. So there are, I think that yogic eye exercises are very, very good for the third eye. So I'm going to be doing a video on the third eye very soon, and I will show these exercises in greater detail. But typically in a simple yogic eye exercise, you just move your eyes in different directions. So you would look up and then you would look down, and then you look to the upper right and then the lower left, and then you look to the upper left and the lower right, and you move the eyes around, and then after kind of a round of that, usually you rub your hands and then place them over the eyes, and then you might repeat the cycle. So yogic eye exercises are very good for stimulating the third eye, which in turn can be very good for your psychic development. So other things that you can do are third eye meditations. There are great ones on YouTube that you can get. Um, and I think another thing that is really interesting for psychic development and just kind of working with a third eye is to attempt to pull a specific card from an oracle or a tarot card deck. So I like to test myself this way as well. Can you find a specific card? So just pick a card, Empress, for example. Can you pull it out of the deck on the first try, on the second try, on the third try? So it can be a way to just kind of work with your psychic abilities, and you'll find that if you do practice that often, you get much better at it. Another thing that I think is really good for psychic development is really connecting to synchronous events around you. So a synchronicity exercise, I think I've shared this one before, but I'll share it again here. Um, Really paying. So during the synchronicity exercise, you would come up with a question, for example, or something that you want to know about. And I would do this on a day when you don't have like a lot of schedule things to do, because the way that our psychic abilities work is because they come from the unconscious, they are not they get inhibited very much by schedules and time and stress and things like that. So if you can find a day where you're going to be very relaxed and there isn't much of a schedule, and come up with something you'd like to know about, and then you just kind of repeat that intention. I'd like to know about blank. Now leave your house and kind of go out. And I would try to be unstructured about this. Take a walk, but don't follow a path that you normally follow. Just sort of try to follow your intuition. Let your feet guide you where you're going. And then you will be paying attention to the things that you see around you. And the first very strange and unusual thing you see, pay attention to that and see if that connects to the question that you had. If that doesn't connect, then keep going. And then again, what's the next strange and unusual thing that it doesn't have to be see, it could even be hear or smell, things like that. Just pay attention to all of your senses and just realize that the universe is trying to communicate with you. And so we can actually strengthen our psychic gifts when we play games like that with the universe. Tell the universe, I'm playing with you today. The other thing that I think is really important is make sure that you pay a special attention to your dreams during the dark moon. I would say the same thing during the full moon, but during the dark moon, it can be much easier for us to access the unconscious, and this includes through our dreams. So again, just kind of pay attention. Past life regression is another great thing to be doing during the dark moon. One of the best ways to do this, unless you have a teacher or a guide who's actually going to guide you through a practice like this, is to use guided meditations when you're first starting out. But past life regression, I will talk about this in a future video, probably do a whole video on it. And in our Shadow Seekers membership, we're going to be doing a full month on it in the future. So if you're really into past life regression or want to learn more about it and you're not in Shadow Seekers, consider we're going to be doing that in the summer. So another thing you can do during the dark moon is yin yoga or restorative yoga. So I would just like to explain a bit about it. For those who don't know, yin yoga and restorative yoga are not like the yoga you think. In the West, we think of yoga as being this kind of movement yoga. A lot of people do power yoga, and there's nothing at all wrong with that. It's a form of yoga, but it's nothing to do with our yin yoga. So why I say this is because there are people who get turned off by yoga, but when they discover yin yoga, they find something that they love so much. So I just want to make sure that we don't get turned off by that word in any way. So in yin yoga and restorative yoga, you are typically going to be lying or sitting or in some kind of a position for an extended period of time. It could be 3 to 5 minutes. Sometimes people do it for 10 minutes. And during that time, your body begins to relax in such a way that some of that stuck and stagnant energy that was caught in your body in different parts, in your energetic system, for example, or a body part, will actually let go during that time. And so what some people find is when that energy lets go, so they'll just be like in a position, for example, and they will find that over time, the body lets go of this energy, and then all of a sudden they have a shadow work aha moment, like one of those spontaneous shadow work sessions. But the other thing you can do is you can actually use a prompt during your yin yoga. So you would get into a pose, you would use that prompt, and then you would just let the body relax and then just be aware of any insights that come. So either way that you do this, the session itself, yin yoga, can be very cathartic, and it's not unusual for people to release large amounts of energy during this, stuff that they didn't even know was stuck. And so it's not unusual at all to see people begin to weep during yin yoga, because these repressed emotions that were kind of stuck, you might not even know what they were, and you don't need to know what they were. They just get released, and people will cry, and they actually have no understanding of why they're crying, but it just feels so good. So if you've never tried yin yoga, highly, highly recommend it, especially during the dark moon. If you work with deities, working with the dark deities during this time is very helpful. Deities of the underworld are very good. Deities, of the dark moon, crone deities. Some that I like, but this is not this is not limited to just these, but here are some ideas. I love Kali for this, and Nana or Ereshkigal is her sister, who many feel is the representation of the shadow. Lilith, Hecate, Persephone, Nyx, the Morrigan. Again, this list is not exhaustive, but those are some ideas for some darker moon deities that you can work with. And then another thing, you may just want to simply rest and restore. So you may find that you're more tired during the dark moon. As we get to the very end of the cycle, you may find that you are lower energy. This is not unusual at all. If you need more sleep, try to get more sleep right now. If you need to be alone right now. So you just really take care of yourself during this time more than any other time. Prioritize your self-care, because again, a lot of emotions can come up during the dark moon. All right, so I was going to talk about just simply a little bit about the timing before we end here, and then I've got a few questions, and then if anybody has any questions as well, I will answer all of those too. And it does not have to be limited to the dark moon, by the way. So the timing of this specific moon. So if you go to a lunar calendar, you will, and I will put the link for the one I use. I put it in below a few of my videos, but I will do that here as well. So if you go to this lunar calendar and you put in your location, it's going to show you the times of the different phases of the moon, in particular, the full moon, the new moon, and then it will show you both quarters. So if you go there, you will find that the new moon of this cycle is at 9:12 p.m. tonight. This is 4:19, and that's 9:12 Pacific time. So anybody who is west of East Coast time in the United States is, this is where it gets weird. It's that the new moon would be taking place today. So like I said earlier, my watch is saying that this is the new moon. But yet, the new moon isn't actually going to happen for another 5 hours or so. So this is where it can be a little misleading, because we think, if we look at that watch, oh, this is the new moon, I've missed the dark moon. Well, the dark moon hasn't happened yet. So this is where looking at the lunar calendars, which actually are more precise than just like a watch like this, or just a calendar that doesn't have times on it, can be a little misleading. All right, so if you are living on the East Coast or anywhere east of that, Europe or anywhere east of that, then it's going to say that the new moon is on the 20th. So therefore, they all would be celebrating dark moon right now. So it's really this particular one is a little misleading for those of us who are west of East Coast time zone in the United States. Now, at the end of all of this, what I feel is that you just really want to sense this energy, because there's a lot of overlap between dark and new moon energy. So when we get to 9:12 p.m. Pacific tonight, or whatever time zone you're in, when that moment happens, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden the dark moon is gone and the new moon has begun, because these energies, they are interwoven with each other. So during this time, you have the space to let go of something and then set intentions for something new. And you can do that. You could do your dark moon ritual tomorrow if you want, for example, because you have some wiggle room here. This energy is really here for the next like 2 to 3 days. And then what I would do after whatever you're going to release, whenever you feel ready to release something, then see if you'd like to set an intention. And that becomes the new moon energy there. Um, Now, let's see if there's anything else to say here. Let's see, I already said all this. I got some notes here. Okay, now here is something else to consider, is that the new moon, we talked about the new moon and we talked about the dark moon, but we haven't talked about the black moon yet. Now, the black moon, sometimes you'll hear people refer to dark moon and black moon is the same thing, and they are not the same thing. So I just want to clear up a misconception here, because, and I actually have seen some people making posts that are not actually correct about the dark moon or the black moon either. So I think the first problem is there's a bit of disagreement about how we define a black moon. So I'm going to give you 3 definitions, and then you can kind of figure out which one makes the most sense for you, and I'll tell you which one I think makes the most sense as well. So the one definition of the black moon is the second new moon in a calendar month. And that would be like a blue moon. So the blue moon is the second full moon that happens in a calendar month. And because we have 13 moon cycles in a year, in a solar year, and we have 12 calendar months, inevitably, right, we're going to have 2 full moons in one month, and we may have 2 new moons in one month as well. Now, so I recently saw some posts where people were calling this a black moon for that reason. But if you think about it, it's only the 19th. So how could we have had another dark moon or another new moon already in this month? It's only the 19th, and you would need a space of 29 days for you to have 2 in one month. So what those people are talking about is the second definition of a black moon, and this is the second moon in the same sign in a solar month. So what that means is you look at the sign that we're in. So right now we're in Aries as the sun sign. So if there are 2 new moons in Aries while we're in Aries sun, that is considered a black moon. So that's, I think, really what people are talking about, but then I've been seeing them say calendar month, but what they really mean is solar month. So in fact, that is true for us because we had a new moon at the very, very beginning as the sun moved into Aries, and we're having one right now as the sun is about to move into Taurus. And by that definition, we would call this a black moon as well. Now, the third definition is used by NASA and astronomers, and this is the third new moon. The third new moon in a season that has 4 new moons. I think that one's a bit complicated, but that's the one that NASA uses. As a witch, I don't think we're using that definition. I think we're using one of the other 2. So either second new moon in a month, in a calendar month, or second new moon in a solar month, which would mean in the same sign of the sun. Now, additionally, it's actually important for us to recognize that this is also an eclipse right now. Now, this is actually a hybrid solar eclipse, and you'll probably have seen some people talking about it. And what that means is a combination of an annular and a total eclipse. I'm not going to go into all the details of what that means, but it is the eclipse is going to look like 2 different types of eclipses, and it'll be very quick in succession. But the problem is that this particular eclipse right now is not visible many places that are inhabited. So you'll be able to see it in parts of Australia, and there's really only this like little tiny strip where they're going to be in totality, and a lot of it's over the ocean. And so here in the United States, where a lot of our viewers are, we won't see this at all. We wouldn't experience or understand it at all. But some people are saying that because of this being that strange hybrid eclipse, and because that eclipse is going to move from being annular, so annular is like where there's just like a aura or like a halo around the sun, and the total eclipse is where, of course, the entire sun is cast in the shadow of the moon, and you will not see it at all. So because that eclipse is going to flip between those two really quickly within a few seconds, people say that this particular solar eclipse is going to affect all of us, and that it is a good time to kind of be between two worlds, because the eclipse energy itself is going to be between two types of eclipses. So that's something to consider. And if you are here in the United States like me, the next total solar eclipse will not take place for another year. So in 2024 on 4/8, there will be a total eclipse, and most of the United States will see parts of it, but there is a strip that's going to go all the way down from up in Canada, eastern Canada, and Maine, and it's going to go all the way across the United States and end down in Mexico, in the western part of Mexico. And that entire part will be in the 100%, so there will be no visible sun during that time. So that's kind of exciting. And if you are somebody who's never seen a total eclipse like me, you might consider trying to get to one of those locations where they're going to be in totality. But that's on 4/8, 2024, and you do have to plan ahead, because you got to get the glasses. And if you don't live near one of those places, I guarantee you that the hotel rooms are going to be sold out, because everybody's going to go try to see this thing. So anyway, if you're interested, I would go look into it now. All right, so I am going to, I've come to the end of everything, and I am going to go and look at I got some comments here and maybe some questions, and I have a couple questions that people sent me. I'm going to answer those before we end. So, hi to everybody who's joining, or who has joined. Yeah, okay. Jen says that over the past couple of days, she's been going over and over the same something almost annoyingly. So, yeah, it could be your mind just like working out something, and it could be getting ready to release something, or kind of have that insight or aha moment. But it can get annoying during this time, because it's like, I don't know, it's almost like the universe just tapping you on the shoulder, like, hey, we got to pay attention to this thing. And sometimes we don't know what that thing is. And that can lead to a lot of annoyance. Like, what are you trying to tell me, right? But I would just try to relax into the energy, and, just see what you're able to come up with or let go. All right, Danielle said, could you explain intentions? I'm trying to explain it to my daughter, but I'm failing horribly. Okay, so, well, an intention is just, unless I'm misunderstanding the question, and if I am, just correct me, but an intention is usually just a goal. So let's say our intention is letting go of a fear, a deep-seated fear that we've had. So that would be the intention. Or our intention could be drawing in friendships, or our intention could be a new job. That's really all that intentions are, unless I'm misunderstanding the question. But it would just be like, you usually want to set an intention before a magical working. And some people will say that the more specific you can be about it, the better, because, just tip the camera, because otherwise the universe, like, so let's just say, okay, she said I've got it. Okay, so let's say like I do an intention for love, for example, but that's like so broad. What does that mean, an intention for love? So the universe may not understand what I'm talking about, and so love could come in multiple different ways. So sometimes people will do like they have the intention of like a relationship, but maybe they're not specific enough, and then they end up getting a cat, or like a cat just shows up, right? So that is a relationship. It's a loving one. But so we want our intentions to be as specific as we can make them, but I still say like leave the universe a little bit of wiggle room, right, to fill the intention. But that's really all an intention is. It's just, what are we trying to draw in, or what are we trying to let go of? Okay, so I have got a couple questions here. So Misty She was asking a great question, and I think that other people are going to relate to this one. So she says that she'd like to learn different ways to be able to actually visualize during her meditation and stay focused on an object during meditation. And she said it's extremely hard with ADD. So I have a lot of students. So many of you know that besides doing what I do here, I'm a science and a math teacher, and I also teach mindfulness to my students. A majority of my students that I see, they have dyslexia. They have different learning differences, but like I would say, probably 80% of them have ADD, ADHD. Maybe even higher than 80%. It just happens to be the types of students that I get sent. So these students have a lot of trouble meditating, and so when I try to bring in, the mindfulness techniques, I have to be aware of that, and I have to, you know, tweak them sometimes to help these students because traditional meditation may not work for them. So I've got a couple ideas for you, and maybe some of these will resonate. And these are some of the ideas I've told them as well. So one thing about meditation is that it's really important for anybody, but especially somebody who has like attentional issues or trouble with focusing. It's really important to find your comfort zone when it comes to meditation. So traditional ways of meditating may not work for you. Those traditional ways are generally sitting. Anybody who's followed me knows that I will say that you don't have to sit to do meditation. I recommend lying down for many people, but that may not work for people who are having trouble focusing or have ADD. So what I would say for you is feel free to get into a position that is going to work. So stand or even move during the meditation. Now I mentioned walking meditation. I am going to talk about that here, but I want to just provide a bit of answer for you because I know that you, in particular, Misty, are in my membership where we do those guided meditations. So here are some ideas that you could use during a guided meditation, and then I'll give some ideas about like a walking meditation, which would be something separate. So during a guided meditation, what I would tell people is feel free to move, to rock, to sway, to make circles. So like you could be sitting there and you're closing your eyes and you meditate and you just are kind of like circling like this. And if you are on like a group call, but just know on mine, we would never bother anybody. But if you're embarrassed of it, that you're going to be moving, just turn the camera off during that part. But I would try moving, and I would also try rubbing something between your fingers. So if you've never used mala beads, mala beads could be a good option for you as well. I know that people who have ADD have had great success with mala beads. So if you've never used them before, I don't have one nearby, so I will show you later on what they look like. But they're strands of beads. It kind of looks like a necklace, but they're very long. It looks like a rosary in a lot of ways. And then it usually has like a little tassel or a bead on the end, and it's made of 108 beads. And so what you can do is you can do a counting meditation. So you just count 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just go around the 108 and kind of start again. But many people I know with ADD just like to just rub the beads anyway. So I would think about anything that helps you focus when you're not in the meditative state. You could try any of those things during meditation and see if they work. Like we don't need this to be a traditional meditation style. So really ask yourself what helps you in other areas of your life stay focused and see if you could bring that into the meditation. Now with the walking meditation, this would be something different than during a guided meditation. So during the guided meditation, I would see if you can move around, see if you can fidget with something and see if that helps. Now a different form of meditation though is that walking meditation where you find a space where you can kind of pace back and forth. It doesn't have to be long. It can be like kind of a hallway in the room. It can be just a small space in the yard or a park, and you just walk like 100 paces, and then you turn around and you walk the other way, and you just go back and forth, and you just see if you can let your mind kind of go. And sometimes people find more success with that kind of meditation when they're having trouble focusing. Because again, you don't have to do the traditional styles. Something else would be to consider using like sensory cues. This goes for anybody who is having trouble staying focused during meditation. Consider using sensory cues. So what that means is you will set up a set of like sensory cues that you're only going to use during meditation. So it's literally you're going to find an outfit, and when it's time to meditate, you're going to put that outfit on, and you're only going to wear it during meditation. Um, Incense, you're going to get like a stick of incense if you tolerate incense, and you will burn only that scent and never burn it for anything else, because what you're trying to do is you're setting up a series of sensory cues that when your unconscious mind smells that scent, you put that outfit on. Another thing would be like music, play the same song but only that song, and don't play it anywhere else. And so your unconscious mind is like, okay, all these things have happened. I know what's happening now. We're meditating. And so if you try that over time, that can help. Um, let's see, I think I had one other thing for you. The other thing, just a thought, if you do take medication, one thing that even like experts on ADD and ADHD recommend is you could you could take your medication before meditation, just like you would take it. Like many of my students, they take it, they're going to go to their exam right before their exam, or they know they've got like a long study session with me, they'll take extra medication then. So if you do take medication for focusing, you could consider taking it during meditation. It might seem strange, but people have had success with that. And also remember, when it comes to visualization, you don't have to visualize to be successful at meditation. You don't have to visualize at all. You just listening to the words of the person who is guiding you and just letting those words wash over you can often be enough. And I would try like visualization exercises. So we did one last month in Shadow Seekers membership during the ritual, the Dark Moon ritual, where we stepped into a tarot card. Anybody can do this meditation. It's very good for strengthening your visualization. And you just take a tarot card or an oracle card, and especially one that has like a frame. And so you stare at it and you try to memorize all the details, and you close your eyes, and then you try to remember the details, and inevitably you won't remember them all. And then you open your eyes, and then you look at it again, and then you try to see anything you've missed, and then you close your eyes and then try to bring it up again. And each time it's going to get stronger and stronger and stronger, and then eventually what you can do is just imagine yourself sort of stepping through the frame of the card into the card and then exploring. But you don't even have to do that part. If you just want to strengthen your visualization, just try that exercise. Maybe do like 3 or 4 rounds of it, just looking at the card, closing your eyes and remembering it. Then look at it again. What did you miss? And just do that over and over. If you do that enough, that can actually strengthen visualization. All right, so I hope that helped. And Tanessa was saying 10 paces in the yard, walking back and forth 10 can, she said it works like a charm. Yeah, walking meditation is incredible, and 10 paces is absolutely enough. Okay, and then I got one more question from Nancy. I know this is going long, but I'm going to answer everybody's questions here. Okay, so Nancy asked about spell work, in particular spell work that's not working. So she said she has a question about spell work. How can she get her money spells to work? Okay, so I've got some thoughts. There can be a lot of reasons why spells don't work. So one of the things is we want them to be specific, but not too specific. So I always feel like you got to let the universe have a little bit of wiggle room, but we also can't be our intention can't be so open-ended. Like an intention just for money can be a bit complicated, because what does that mean? And so if you can do a spell that's like more specific, what exactly do you want? Do you want like 10% or 20% more than you have right now? That starts to get more in that realm of being specific, but it still gives some room for the universe to work. I think that whenever someone comes to me and they say that they're having spells that are not working, and it's like a series of spells, I think the two things to think about most usually are mindset and like any blockages you could have, and self-belief. So, mindset is very important. So, exploring ideas about money can be extremely important. And what I would first consider is your family's relationship to money and what you were taught when you were growing up about money. So, this can be like if we come from a family where there wasn't much, we can carry that feeling with us that we're like not worthy of it, that we don't deserve it, that it's just not for us. And so even if consciously we're doing the spells and we consciously want to draw this in, if we have got some unresolved issues around our own mindset when it comes to anything, money is just one intention, but any intention that can impede the flow of this energy. So really understanding your own ideas about money and anything that could be blocking it. We unfortunately live in a society that is dominant dominated by the Abrahamic religions, where there is a lot of ideas about money being dirty and bad, and so we can often carry that with us unknowingly. So one thing I think is that repetition in your spells can really help. It can help with mindset and it can help with self-belief. So doing the same spell every cycle, you know, maybe changing it a little bit, but that repetition can help a lot. And timing wise, you know, you want to be specific intentions are better at different times. So timing this during a full moon or during a waxing moon rather than doing something during the waning moon can be really important. It's also important to manage our expectations, because sometimes we think spells will happen like that. Sometimes they can take 6 months, maybe longer, to really manifest. So really managing our expectations about that. Also, you want to consider, do you follow up with mundane acts? Because if you do a spell for money and you have the same job and there's not going to be like an increase in pay, it's hard to see where that money would come from, especially if we're expecting the money to come from work. So you want to make sure we're following up with mundane acts. So like, for example, if you're going to have a yard sale, well, you're going to probably make some money. You could do a spell to like boost how much money you make or how many people come to it. So there are different ways that you can reframe the intentions and then follow it up with something mundane. The other thing to consider always is, seems strange to say because most people would probably say, yes, I do this, but just really make sure how focused and grounded you are during spells. Like if you're not don't have enough sleep, or you're really anxious, or you're stressed, or anything like that, your spells may not have the best effect. So the other thing I wanted to mention, and this is for anybody, and I will post this. Like, this is not like a money magic group or anything, but I do know quite a bit about money magic. And there is this spell that goes around where people, on the first of the month, people blow a handful of cinnamon through the front doorway, and there's a little chant that you say to increase prosperity. And you might see it going around in some of the other groups. People post this in different places. But I have to say, I did this spell for like 4 or 5 months just to see what would happen. And it's interesting because there was an increase, an unexpected increase in my income during those months. So interesting spell to try. So I hope that some of that helps, but if it doesn't, Nancy, just reach out to me, okay, and we can chat, and maybe I can give you some other ideas. Okay, let me see if there are any other questions here. Okay, so I think I got everybody. All right, so I'm going to sign off because our Shadow Seekers membership is having a dark moon ritual in like 25 minutes, and I got to get ready for that. So anyway, happy dark moon, everybody. Even though it says new moon on some of our calendars, it's still the dark moon, so you got time to really let go of some stuff, and then you'll have that space to draw things in for the new moon. Okay. Next week, I'm unfortunately away for having a surgery, so I won't be here. No Ask Aislin next week, but I'll be back the following week on the 3rd with an episode on Beltane. All right. Until then, blessed be.